everyone, and welcome back to Let's Talk Tech, brought to you by Sinewave Technologies. We are lucky enough to have Steve Lodin with us today. Welcome, Steve, and thank you for joining.
Happy to be here. Great seeing you, Maddie.
So could you start off by telling me a bit about yourself, your current role, and your background?
So I run the cybersecurity operations team in corporate security at Sallie Mae. If you remember through the years, we've split the Sallie Mae company into Sallie Mae and Navient. I'm currently with Sallie Mae. I've been there 9 years now. I run the cybersecurity operations team that's focused on perimeter security, endpoint security, vulnerability management, threat intelligence, and making sure that our endpoints and our servers are well protected.
Awesome, and that's great for our topic today. At Sinewave, we help small to medium-sized businesses with their IT services. The way with technology is advancing and cyber attacks are increasing, we've been focusing a bit more on how to help our clients minimize their security risk. Could you talk with me a bit about baseline security configurations and why businesses should be focusing on them?
Absolutely. Security configuration management and baseline security configurations are important to keep the hackers away. So it's a critical piece of maintaining confidentiality, integrity, and availability of your systems. Before you begin though, a couple of the key hygiene points for security are you have to have an inventory so you know what you're going to configure, and you should be doing active patching to make sure that systems are patched with the latest patches from the vendor, and making sure that you're not running end-of-life or out-of-date software. Once you get into the basics, they're completed, then you can start configuring what is called the security configuration baseline. These are the settings for each server or each system to put it into a secure mode. By default, in the old days, back in Windows NT and Windows 7, the system was delivered to the end user, not configured securely, but configured openly, and so that the user can do whatever they want. Well, in a small, medium-sized business, when you're concerned about attackers stealing your money or stealing your data, you have to put additional configuration settings in place to prevent that from happening. So security configurations is a process. Basically, you have to set those customized security configurations first. You got to decide on what the scope is and the platforms you're going to look at. So for a medium-sized business, you're going to have endpoints running Windows 10. You're going to have a couple of Windows servers or a couple of Linux servers, and you're going to have network gear, Cisco, Juniper. Decide what you're going to focus on, and all of those matter, especially the ways into your data center, VPNs. Those are what are being exploited now, mostly by attackers, especially from Russia and China. Once you have your scope, then you decide how are you going to configure that? What standard am I going to use? And I will make a high recommendation on using the Center for Internet Security, the CIS baseline. They work with vendors and end users and come up with the best secure configuration. They publish it, and you can use that to set your own with customizations. So for example, they say that your Windows password should be 14 characters long. Well, that's a good length. The longer the better in today's environment. But if your company doesn't allow you to set that, then you can customize that policy to whatever your own company sets. Once you've decided on these configurations and set the baseline, then you go out and you start, you lock that in place and you start to do your assessments. Okay, now I've got a couple hundred systems. I want to see how close to the baseline they are. You run an assessment against it. Hopefully you can afford or find an automated tool, because doing hundreds of little checkbox checks on each system can add up and kind of be a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
If you've automated that, you'll get back results that identify each system and each of the long list of configuration items and give you a pass or fail. Once you've completed that pass or fail assessment, you send that back to the owner of the system, either the OS owner or the endpoint. You tell them where they're at. Here's what you've got to reconfigure to make it more secure. finally, once you're done with that, that application owner, that system owner, that endpoint owner have to remediate. Go fix settings, or basically propose changes in your assessment. Well, you just assessed me at 14 characters, but our company standard is 8. So while it says fail, you need to change what you assessed me at down to 8 so that I can show you that I'm passing. Mm-hmm. When you're done with all of that, you've got a system that is much more hardened to attackers, and that's the end goal there.
So with this, figuring out the configurations and where your baseline is this something that a company should follow up more than once, or like how often should they revisit their baseline?
The baselines, especially published by the CIS, Center for Internet Security, come out about annually or whenever the vendor makes a change in their operating system. So there was a Windows 10, there will be a Windows 11. So that's in the definition of the standard for each operating system or each platform. Once they come out with that, if they don't change annually, you should, as a company, take a look at that annually to see if there's been any changes. On the assessment on your own systems, I would recommend that happens quarterly. It's to say weekly or monthly is probably more work than it's worth, but especially assessing on a quarterly basis, you'll have a good feel for where those systems are at and if you've made any changes.
Could you go into a little bit more depth on like why it's important to do that annually? I feel like a lot of times, specifically people like me who are not in the corporate world, you get comfortable, you think you've followed these certain steps that you think you needed to do, but as I mentioned before, technology just keeps advancing and you've got to keep up with it. And so maybe you could talk a bit about why you have to keep up with this sort of stuff.
Yeah, sure. Well, attackers don't sleep, and they don't run on a US work week type of environment. They're always attacking you. So taking that into consideration, the software itself changes, the best configuration does change, and most vendors will make changes to their operating systems or to their platform appliances to make sure that they're addressing security. So like I said right at the beginning, making sure that you're patched and up to date with your systems is critical. An example on the password side as a setting. Back in the day, 5-10 years ago, the best practice was to have 8 characters, 1 capital, lowercase, uppercase, numbers, and special characters, right? Mm-hmm. Well, today's environment, the attackers can take that 8 characters, regardless of what type they are, and break that password rapidly. So now the best practice is to say 15 to 20 characters, use a passphrase. And just that length makes it much more difficult to crack from an attacker's perspective. So now, as a company, let's say that you realize that you've taken the guidance from the National Institute of Standards and Technologies in the US that says go longer, and you want to make a change. So you change that in your default expectations in your password setting tools in Microsoft. There's a GPO setting that you use to denote is it 8 or more. So if you've made that change, now you want to go back and make sure that all the systems are set that way. If you're making frequent changes, or the operating system manufacturer is making frequent changes, you want to assess those and be real time. In our particular environment, we are running testing on a monthly basis to see if there's any trending, to see if there's any changes in the configuration that might have happened and have been rolled out to cause failures in our compliance with those security benchmarks.
Thank you so much, Steve. This has been super insightful. Is there anything else you would like to add before I let you go today?
Security configurations is a challenge. It's a tool and automation process that is challenging to implement. So the expectations are not really high that everybody, even small business, needs to be doing it at this point. And don't ever think that you'll ever get to 100% compliance. There's always going to be systems or changes or missing configurations that will happen. That's just basically the way it is. Never expect 100% compliance.
Thank you. I could not agree more. Well, it's been a pleasure, Steve. Hopefully we can talk again soon.
Appreciated it.
All right. Have a good day.